Today we're going to do Module 2, Lesson 4, excuse me, Interpreting and Computing Division of a Fraction by a Fraction. Today we're going to focus on unlike denominators and modeling. There are a few things that we need to put into our notes today. I'm sure that some of you may already know these terms or definitions, and it may be a little bit easier for you, but we're going to go ahead and put them on our notebooks just for reference. So our first vocabulary word is equivalent. Fractions. Remember, we always put a box around our vocabulary word. And equivalent fractions are two or more fractions with the same value. And now we're going to talk about how you make fractions equivalent. To make, let's say, an equivalent fraction. Multiply or divide both the numerator. Remember, the numerator is the top number. And the denominator. Denominator is the bottom number. By the same number. Now we're going to do a couple examples of that. For example, if I have the fraction 1/4 and I want to find an equivalent fraction, I can multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So I'm going to multiply 1 times 2, that gives me 2, and 4 times 2, which gives me 8. So then I can say 1/4 is the same as 2/8. And if I want to make my fraction the numbers in my fraction smaller, then I could say 6/9. If I divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same number, 6 divided by 3 is 2, 9 divided by 3 is 3, so then I could say 6/9 is the same as 2/3. Now we're going to go on to talk about mixed numbers. A mixed number is a number that is made up of both a whole number and a fraction. For example, 1 5/6. The 1 is your whole number. And the 5/6, that's your fraction. Then we're going to go on to our next page, and we're going to talk about improper fractions. And this is a fraction in which the numerator, remember numerator means top number, is bigger than the denominator. And an example of that would be like 6/3, because the 6 is actually bigger than the 3. So that's an improper fraction. And then we're going to talk about how would we change an improper fraction into a mixed number. Change a mixed number to an improper fraction. There are a couple steps. So in my example, I'm going to show you the steps. So if I have the mixed number 1 2/3, my first step is to multiply the denominator by the whole number. And I usually write it like this. So I'm going to be doing 3 times 1. My second step is to add the numerator. So 3 times 1 gives me 3. So I put my answer up at the top. That's just what I do. And then I'm going to add that to the numerator. And your last step is to put the answer over the same denominator. So in my step 1, I multiply 3 times 1, that gives me 3. And then I add in 3 plus 2, which gives me 5. So my improper fraction becomes 5 over 3. So 1 2/3 is the same as 5 over 3. Then if I want to change . an improper fraction to a mixed number, there are two steps that I need to do. So here's your example. If you have 7/3, your first step is to divide the numerator by the denominator. So I'm just going to divide 7 by 3. And 3 goes into 7 2 times, and 2 times 3 is 6. I subtract, I have 1 left. And your second step is to put the remainder over the same denominator. So the 1 is my remainder, so I'm going to put it over my denominator. So 7/3 is the same as 2 1/3. And we're going on actually to a third page because there's one more important thing that we have to talk about. And then we're going to go on into today's lesson. And this is a 3-star note. This is very important for you to know when working with today's assignment. When dividing fractions with unlike or different denominators, first, find common or like denominators. So I'm going to give you an example. If I have 2/3 divided by 1/2, you can see here my denominators don't match. So I have to think to myself, is there a number that I can divide 3 and 2 into equally? And the first number that pops into my head is 6. So how can I change a 3 to a 6? Oh, I would multiply that by 2. And remember, whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So this fraction actually becomes 4/6 because 2 times 2 equals 4 and 3 times 2 equals 6. Then I have to put back in my division symbol, and then I have to think to myself, what can I multiply by 2 to get 6? Well, I can multiply 3 by 2, and whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So 2 times 3 is 6, and 1 times 3 is 3. So now this is my problem that I'm going to be working with. So then I'm going to do my keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep my 4/6. I'm going to change my division to multiplication. And I'm going to flip to my reciprocal, which is 6/3. And if you remember in yesterday's lesson, we did cross cancel. So my 2 6s can both become 1s. So 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 3 is 3. So now I have an answer of an improper fraction, and I can change that improper fraction to a mixed number by dividing 4 by 3. How many 3's are in 4? 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract with a remainder of 1. So I put that over my same denominator. So 4/3 is the same as 1 and 1/3. So the important thing to remember is to first find that common denominator. You could also model this. In modeling this, I would have sorry, I probably made that one a little bit too big. One, two, three, four, five, six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to have 4 6 divided by 3 6. Oh wait, I made a mistake. I don't need this one at all. So I color in my 4 out of 6. I'm dividing it into 3 6. So I have this is 3 6. And then when I go to make my next 3 6, you can see I only have 1 out of 3. So this is actually 1/3. So I have 1 and 1/3. That's how I would model that. I'm just going to go ahead and erase this just to keep my notes clean. Sorry that I messed up on that model for you. But we'll do some more practicing of modeling in today's assignment. So go ahead and take out your math book and open it up to page S17. That's lesson 4, interpreting and computing division of fraction by a fraction with models. So this first part, this opening exercise, they just want you to make some equivalent fractions, and it says write at least 3 equivalent fractions for each fraction below. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that fraction 3 times, and I'm just going to multiply both the numerator and denominator by the same numbers. So in this first one, I'm going to multiply them both by 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 2 is 6. So there's one equivalent fraction for 2/3. The next one, I'm just going to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 3. So 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 3 is 9. And for my last one, I'm just going to multiply them both by 4. So 2 times 4 is 8, and 3 times 4 is 12. So 4 6, 6 9ths, and 8 12ths are all equivalent to 2/3. You may remember that this is very similar to finding equivalent ratios. We're going to do the same thing for 10/12. I'm going to first write that fraction 3 times just so that I'm ready for setting up my next part of finding an equivalent fraction. So I'm going to multiply 10 times 2 and 12 times 2. And 10 times 2 is 20, and 12 times 2 is 24. And I can do 10 times 3 and 12 times 3, and 10 times 3 is 30, and 12 times 3 is 36. And for this last one, I'm going to show you how we can use division. I can divide both the top number and the bottom number by 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So that actually made those numbers smaller. So 3 equivalent fractions for 10/12 are 20 over 20, 20 24ths, 30 36, and 5 6. Next, we're going to go on to example 1. And feel free to pause these videos anytime that you feel like we are going too fast. So in example 1, it says Molly has 1 3/8 cup of strawberries. She needs 3/8 cup of strawberries to make 1 batch of muffins. How many batches can Molly make? Use a model to support your answer. So this is a mixed number. And when we have a mixed number, we want to first change it into an improper fraction. It will just make things a little bit easier for dividing. So if I have 1 3/8, to change this into an improper fraction, I'm going to first multiply 1 times 8, and I get 8. And I'm going to add 8 plus 3, which gives me 11. And then I keep my same denominator, so I actually have 11/8. So that's what 1 3/8 is equal to. So I'm actually dividing 11/8 divided by 3/8 to make this model. Because it's an improper fraction, I'm actually going to need 2 parts. Because I have to color in 11/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this represents my 1, my whole number from my original fraction there. And then 1, 2, 3 more. This represents my 3/8. So I have 11/8 colored in total. And now I'm going to divide it into 3/8. So I am going to be circling every 3. I have to get one up from over here. And right here, I'm circling only 2 out of 3. So this is actually 2/3 because I'm only circling 2 out of the 3 that I need. So I have 1 whole group, 2 whole groups, 3 whole groups. And then I have a part of a group, which is 2/3. And then I can also check this with my equation. 11/8 divided by 3/8. And I'm going to do my keep, change, flip. So I keep my 11/8, change to multiplication, flip to my reciprocal, cross cancel to 1. So 11 times 1 is 11. 1 times 3 is 3. And to change that to an improper change the improper fraction into a mixed number, I'm going to divide. How many 3's go into 11? 3. Subtract. I have 2 left over, and I put my 2 over my same denominator. So 11/3 is the same as 3 2/3. So again, the same answer as I got here with my modeling. And then I have to actually write out my answer. Molly can make 3 2/3 batches of muffins. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next example. And there are several examples today. So today's lesson is going to go just a little bit longer because we had quite a bit of notes to start with. Molly's friend Xavier also has 11/8 cup of strawberries. He needs 3/4 cup of strawberries to make a batch of tarts. How many batches can he make? So So I'm going to be dividing my 11/8 by 3/4, and these two fractions have unlike denominators. So the first thing I have to do, if you remember, was I was going to get them to have common denominators. So my original equation would look like this. So I'm going to think to myself, is there something that I can divide both 8 and 4 into equally? And the first number that pops into my head is actually 8. So I'm going to be keeping my original fraction, but I'm going to be changing 3/4 so that my denominator becomes 8. So I know if I multiply 4 by 2, I get 8. So then I also have to multiply my numerator by 2. So 4 times 2 is 8, and 3 times 2 is 6. So what I'm really going to be doing is grouping together 6/8. So again, I need my 8s, and because my numerator is bigger than my denominator, I'm going to need 2 models. I'm going to be coloring in 11 of those. And this time I'm going to be circling 6/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This would make my next 6. And I'm actually only circling 5 out of 6. So I have 1 whole and then 5/6. I can also do my keep change flip. So if I have 11/8 divided by 6/8, I can do my keep change flip. So I keep my 11/8, change it to multiplication, and change it to 8/6. Cross cancel, make both of those 1. 11 times 1 is 11. 1 times 6 is 6. Then I divide 11 by 6. How many 6's are in 11? 1. Subtract. I have 5 left over, so my 5 goes over my same denominator, so it's 1 and 5/6. So I can say Xavier can make 1 and 5/6 batches of tarts. On the next example, it just gives us a division of a fraction by a fraction. There's no problem that we're going to have to work out. And it says to use a model to show your answer. This is just like what we practiced the other day. These two have common denominators. So I'm going to have one model. That has 8. I'm going to color in 6 of those. And I'm going to group them in groups of 2. So here's 2 8s. Here's 2 8s. Here's 2 8s. And how many of those do I have? I have 3. I can also do my equation 6 over 8 divided by 2 over 8. I'm going to do my keep change flip. 6/8 multiplied by 8/2. Cross cancel. So 6 times 1 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2. Now I have an improper fraction, so I divide 6 divided by 2, which gives me 3. So again, you can see that my answers both match. And then finally, we're going to go on to our example number 4. Our example number 4 just gives you the problem of 3/4 divided by 2/3. Again, we have unlike denominators, so I have to see if I can figure out how I can get common denominators for 3/4 and 2/3. That's the first thing I'm going to start with. So I'm going to think to myself, what can I change 4 and 3 both into where they're the same number? So the first number I can think of is 12. So how can I change 4 to 12? I can multiply it by 3. So whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 3 is 12. And how can I change 3 to 12? I can multiply that by 4, so that means I also have to multiply 2 by 4. So 2 times 4 is 8, and 3 times 4 is 12. So now my problem is 9/12 divided by 8/12. So if I want to show a model for this, then I'm going to have I have 12. So I have 9. I'm going to circle 8 of those. And then I don't have 8 more to circle, but if I would have to have more over here, I'm only circling 1 out of those 8 that I was circling in my original group. So I have one whole group and then 1 out of 8 of my other groups. So my answer is 1 and 1/8. I can also do my equation, keep, change, flip, keep my 9/12, change to multiplication, flip to my reciprocal, which makes 12/8, cross cancel. So 9 times 1 is 9, 1 times 8 is 8. Do my division, 9 divided by 8, how many 8s are in 9? 1, with 1 left over. And you can see that my two answers are the same. You are going to do exercises 1 through 5. It just says to find each quotient. So it doesn't matter to me if you model or if you do just the equation. So do what works best for you. And then your assignment is going to be the problem set 1 through 4 and your exit ticket. And please follow the instructions that are on the problem set and on the exit ticket. See me if you have any questions.